Kelly. Sorry
Good
for the little.
morning.
Oh, we're still letting people in. Good morning.
Good
Good
morning,
morning.
everyone.
Oh, happy to be here. It's been quite a morning. We were
Mhm.
chatting right before we started. I had a super early flight, but praise God made it back and another flight later, and all is good. But I'm quite overwhelmed at the moment, and that's our topic for today. But first, let me just say welcome, welcome, welcome once again for being here on this Sunday morning where it is always, always a safe space filled with love and compassion and our mutual desire and our collective desire to heal ourselves and our families. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And we are back this morning on the first day of March with our wonderful resident expert and dear friend, Dr. Linda McGhee, who works at the intersection of mental health, race, and social justice. Many of you have been here before, so you know who Dr. McGhee is. She is just an incredible, incredible, wise expert. She's a visiting professor, assistant professor at George Washington University, and assistant clinical professor at Loyola. She's a lawyer. She's a longtime contributor since day one, over 6 years ago, to the SonRise Project.
Cheers.
6 years. Yep, 6 years.
I
I
think
think
we
today
we did that first show on the signs of depression and anxiety
we
in
sure
in
did.
men.
We sure did. It was looking at
It,
depression and
it was
recognizing
before
that.
COVID.
It was right before COVID. Yeah, it was February of 2020. And, I'm so grateful for Dr. McGee. She has been in my life since the boys, my children, Kyle and Chris, were very small. Kyle was a baby, I think. Or did we meet I think we met at a sister
Yeah,
mom's meeting.
we did. You
So
had one.
24,
He was in the
yeah,
arms, and
yeah.
then you shortly thereafter got pregnant with the second one.
Yes. So we've been together forever, and I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for you being here on the
Right.
first
Thank
Sunday
you.
back
Thank
in the month.
you, everyone. I'm so, so happy to be here. And I'm just greeting you all in kindness and in love this morning because one of the things that I went to lunch with some young psychologists yesterday,
Mhm.
and I greeted them with a hug. And they were saying that in the world right now, that kindness was so appreciated, and that touch and that
Mhm.
care of looking someone in their eyes and giving them a hug.
That's right.
Right. And so that kind of neatly brings us into our topic today. And I
Yes.
wanted to greet you all in the same way with a metaphorical hug and some
Yes.
kind words, because we're talking about the state of the world, people being overwhelmed. Kelly and I were batting around March Madness, but
Hmm.
it's not
And
just
mayhem.
March.
It's just
Yeah.
craziness.
Yeah,
Hmm.
it is I think time will have to pass before we really see what the last year and a half or the last few years have done to us as Americans.
Yeah.
But we do know this. The state of mental health was in crisis prior to COVID. We were in a mental health crisis prior to COVID. I've said to you all on numerous occasions here, um, when they start doing studies on African American children's suicide, and they came out with that study in 2020, which is when we started Sunrise,
Hmm.
just so coincidental with Kelly's issues, right?
Hmm.
But her issues are emblematic of what was happening in America generally.
Right.
Um, the national black groups, Jack and Jill, and all those people start calling because they issued this study that said African American suicide among our children was skyrocketing.
That's
And
right.
that pretty much started me as a national speaker on these issues because we were in a crisis. And then after that, we saw COVID, we saw George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, we saw the re election of the current president. We're in a war as of yesterday. Many of our rights in the last few years they've attempted to take them away. Voting Rights Act, student loan forgiveness. I mean, the whole 9 yards. Like this week, they announced a 6-month moratorium on buying prosthetics and other medical supplies that the government has typically helped with.
Mm.
So the cruelty, the chaos, the unease, and the fear are a part of the way we're trying to survive right now.
Right. And I just want to comment that I think, in addition, as you mentioned, the rates of depression, anxiety, all of that pre-COVID was there, yes. But this Kaiser Family Foundation study showed that 11% of adults reported symptoms of anxiety or depression pre-pandemic and post-pandemic. 41% of all adults, but 48% of Black adults reported symptoms, and then of course we all know the statistics in terms of the rates of suicide attempts and
Right.
depression in young people. So, but,
And we're seeing
Mhm.
that those rates of suicide, I just want to interject there because obviously everything you said is correct. But to interject that we're not even getting the whole story because now we don't necessarily say that something was a suicide.
That's right.
And in our communities, we're still suppressing that information.
And people still want to hide it. It's so
Right,
deep. I think that's a part of, our topic for today. And it's really an open session. So I just want to remind people this is for you and for us and for
right,
anybody who has something on your heart,
right,
because Dr. Linda is such a wise soul and friend.
right. And
Um,
yeah, we just wanted to like frame the discussion. You can talk to us about anything that has to do with this mayhem, madness, chaos, but we wanted to frame it in terms of how we can mind our bodies and spirits through these crises.
right.
How we
And
can,
on top of what we're dealing with our children,
right,
or with a partner, or with
right.
ourselves. And so, Dr. Linda, share with us, what a feeling of, I said to you right before this call, I felt overwhelmed. I actually said the word because I had a long night last night in North Carolina wait, was I No, Virginia at the swim meet, and then a crazy early flight. And then I got to get back to Cleveland, to care for my mom and
Mhm.
so it's like I feel overwhelmed. I feel, heart tightness.
Right.
And how do we know when it's overwhelm versus burnout? We talked about burnout a couple weeks ago.
Well, they're parts of the same, they're bad cousins, really. They're parts of the same, the opposite of well-being, right? Overwhelm and burnout, right? You got too many things scheduled. You always feel like you're not accomplishing things. You're not adequately allowing time to
Right,
do things, right? Like you and I have both traveled this morning, right?
right,
And it's nine
mhm,
o'clock. Okay.
right,
We both traveled a flight and a 2.5 hour drive, right? Already today.
right,
So the burnout is that we sometimes overdo it and stress ourselves out so much that it actually leaves us a little numb, right?
hmm hmm
We don't feel as compassionate.
hmm
We look at our child who's struggling and we can't see them in the same way. We start using the world's labels. Oh, he's just lazy, or I'm not good enough, or I'm not a good enough parent. Our outlook
hmm
starts to shift.
hmm
The way that our body handles all of that stress, overwhelm, and burnout is that it turns on us,
That's right.
right? There's numerous books out there, and there's a current controversy about, the body keeps the score and grandma's hands. But what we know is this: stress impacts your cells,
That's
right?
right.
And with Black people in particular, the your cells shorten over your lifetime, and ours shorten quicker, right? Black women, we know that we have more of the thing that increases inflammation and less of the things that decreases inflammation. And that is a key indicator in most diseases, right? It's
Hmm
inflammation.
Right.
So and particularly cancers. We know that stress, we know that biologically, some of the studies are saying that a lot due to racial and stress because of we're women,
Mm-hmm.
we are biologically older than the same age white woman, right? Some
Mm,
studies say we're 7.5 years older. Even though we're the same
biologically.
chronological age, we're biologically inside older.
Mm,
So racial stress also plays a role, right? So we at the intersection of race, gender, being a parent of a child from a marginalized community, all of these things cause us to like be fearful. We're hyper vigilant. We don't we start to see the world as kind of like not in our favor, right?
mhm,
And so we're talking about like real soul injuries that
mm,
come from this, like what we just loosely call burnout, what we loosely call overwhelm. They're serious impacts.
right.
So with that, I wanted to see if people, anybody had a question, or Kelly, do you have anything? But and just like
Sure.
what do y'all feel in your body? What do you feel in your body when you're stressed? I feel tired a lot. Like at the end of the day, it's like tired, weary, tired.
That's how I feel. I'm exhausted most days.
Mhm.
Yeah, really exhausted, sleepy, and yeah. And like I said, even chest tightness, but different than, my blood pressure's fine, like all those things are fine. I think there's so much happening in the world, even like you said, just these past couple of days, that there's this, it's a double burden, triple burden, because we're trying to take care of ourselves, we're trying to take care of our kids, our families, even as some of ours are adults. And then we have all of what's happening in the world and what we're seeing on the news. And it's just a lot. So the question I have for you, back to you, is how do we self-regulate? We've talked a lot about some breathing exercises but how can we regulate our reactions? Because sometimes I know I can overreact to things because of all of the outside stress that's happening.
But I think the first thing we could do is like things like this, is talking about it. Because as a community, we don't talk about like we're hurting.
Mm-hmm.
We are under stress and under siege, right? And make no mistake about it, we are under siege.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing to do is to face that, right? Things are being targeted toward us. The unemployment rate for Black women is skyrocketing, and that is deliberate, right? So we need to understand and recognize that we are under siege and that there are attacks on us that are deliberate. Number
Mm-hmm.
two is to understand that self-care is required and necessary. It's not
Mm-hmm.
optional, right? You cannot fight off the things that are happening in this world, day-to-day life, the bills due, the commutes, um, microaggressions at work, your
Mm-hmm.
child suffering and you not having solutions, resources, or the wherewithal to get them where they need to be,
Right.
right? You can't get them to basically act in their own best interests. I mean, everybody, mostly everybody on this line knows what I'm talking about. You lose control. I have a friend of mine who is, she's at a standstill. Her son will not get his life back on track, and she can't do anything. You cannot commit
He's
your
grown.
child. You
That's
can't
right.
do anything. So a lot of us are facing children who are basically just floating in their 20s. Then someone said something really important. Like we're over examining um are the behaviors of others. I noticed that a lot in terms of professional settings where as I've reached this level where typically
That's
I
right.
don't like spend a whole bunch of time thinking of the other. at work and what they think of me. But I noticed that when we're stressed, we start to like look at every single thing. Not that microaggressions aren't there because we know that they are, but it's unhealthy for us to over focus on the behaviors of others. So
But it's everywhere too. I'm sorry to cut you off. It's
no,
in
you
every
didn't.
situation, right? Go ahead. Finish your thought, please. I cut you
Well,
off.
what I was gonna say is that every situation ain't worth our time, though.
Mhm.
Every person who is in a marginalized or minority group or minoritized group, you cannot afford to look at every single situation closely. Every every slight is not worth our time. Every perceived slight will, if we focus on every perceived slight, we will take ourselves down.
That's right.
And you have got to center yourself as opposed to the other in society enough to know that for your mental health, um, I have been advising a lot of my mentees now to not do what we did when we were younger, right? To over examine ourselves, to make it our problem.
Right.
Everybody's job at work, everybody at work is not your problem. And so
Right.
to understand, you've got to pick your battles. Sometimes you got to leave and sometimes you got to fight. But you have to do all of that with prioritizing yourself and your own mental health first, right?
And a
And
lot of prayer. I want to say that because I was
yes, a lot of
that
prayer.
last
But
night. I love that comment that Melissa made, the over-examining. I'm just thinking out loud right now because last night I was at a swim championship meet for my youngest college thing, and they won. Their team won, and he's the only little, black boy, young man on the team, and the transfer there, and I could see, I was taking videos, I was observing, and I was over-examining the behavior of all those other kids on the team. And I know my child. I could see it in his eyes. It looked like he was an outsider. Even though he was in the circle doing all the things, they were all excited, holding the trophies, but it was just a difference. And it felt very uncomfortable for me. And then I heard about their tradition of going to the beach and being up all night and waiting till the sunset. And I was like, I really don't want my child down in North Carolina out there with all these people who, some of them, because I was over examining and because I could tell who their parents were and what I was hearing about some of their parents, I was really stressed out about the whole thing. And
right,
looking at, at my phone, like where the car was, looking at where he was, and realizing he was there, which
right,
on one hand, I'm so grateful because he's such a soloist, and he's so quiet and an introvert. So on one hand, it's like, that's great that he went to be with the other team, be with his teammates and celebrate their championship or what have you. But the flip of me was like the fear of being in the South and
right,
what's happening to so many young men and
right.
so
But you're
many
trying
kids.
to over control.
I know. And over worry, it's that
Right,
fear factor.
right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's a part of that hypervigilance is always being on guard. We do that with ourselves and we do that with our children,
We
right? That's
do.
a part of the burnout. That's a part of the trauma. Is that
Yeah.
your inability to see situations clearly and to over focus on every little thing. And at the end of the day, you are mentally worn out.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's right. So I love that comment because I just think that yes, the
Mhm.
heart racing, it's all of that with the negative perspective versus, well, oh, that'll be fun for them. It's like, it's just a different reality. But this is an open session, so if anybody has a thought or something you might be dealing with today, please feel free to ask Dr. Linda or share if you're comfortable doing so. You can come off of mute if you'd like. Or not. I have lots of questions. I'm happy to keep chatting.
Hey,
But it
good
looks like
morning.
someone
Can you
came
hear
up.
me?
Good morning. Good
Yes, I
Hey,
morning.
can hear you.
hey, this is Chandra. Sorry, I'm on the West Coast and I wasn't going to say anything because I didn't know how my voice would sound, but it's terribly early. I am definitely in another storm right now. I
Mm.
think most of the time my conversations have been about my son, hypervigilance, about him, ADHD, making poor judgments, he's in, most of you know, he's in culinary school. Nearly, I don't even know how many classes he had and failed three of them, would not attend to his EF coaches, all of the things. This semester is better for him, and has found a community, has friends. He's working with, we have a, um, small business, so he's working with my husband and calling. And yesterday, got up at 8 o'clock looking to see if he could go to work so he could make money. So that was a huge, huge change for him. But in that 16 years of dealing with his ADHD and his behavioral issues, my daughter has been neglected and constantly trying to be the perfect person and do the right thing, to the point where last week she went into a manic episode and ran away. And this
Oh,
was completely out of left field for her. She also has ADHD and, EF coaches, and she's an actress. So she's been in a movie. She went to Paris last summer. She does all the things to do the right thing. And I knew, as a surgeon, as a doctor, I knew that this was in the background, that the risk of her feeling neglected because of our over attention to my son is a problem. But given our busy schedule, and just not knowing what to do, how to help her, you can't really. I knew that she needed a psychiatrist. I knew that she needed more support, but I didn't know how to do it or where to do it. And finding a therapist has been, very difficult, even though she's had many over the years. Just finding someone for her to connect with. But long story short, so she is hospitalized now,
mm,
um, in Berkeley with with a manic episode, which the people in the hospital, they initially attended to it like this was normal for us or for her, and we're like, this has never happened before. The police had to find her, so you can
mm,
imagine how that night was for us a week ago. And I think I wanted to share, for one, because everyone's going through something, and even though if it seems like you have resources, or even you have an awareness of these things with your children, it doesn't negate the fact that it's extreme. Like, you just don't know. There's not enough resources, and it can happen to anyone. So she's getting better. We visited her yesterday, and she is better, but still, fairly paranoid. And it doesn't take away the fact that I can't, I still have a very demanding job. And, one of the things she said to me was that you take care of everyone else, but you don't take care of me.
mhm.
So it's really, really, really hitting hard. But once she gets discharged, I wanted Dr. Linda to maybe talk about expectations. She doesn't, she has a working diagnosis of bipolar, but we don't have bipolar. We've never, we don't have it in our family. She's never been diagnosed, only with ADHD and anxiety, social isolation, and all the things that go with social awkwardness and feeling lonely and not being able to make the right friends, and seeing that, feeling like everyone else is making friends, but you're not making friends. And um, but when she gets discharged, she'll attend PHP. So maybe if you could speak on what our journey is going to look like to help her get well.
First of all, I just want to say to you, you have a lot of guts for sharing this. Um,
Yeah,
and
I I hesitated for a while, and
but I'm
even
glad
last
you did,
Sunday.
because somebody needed to hear this. Somebody else needed to hear this today, and your generosity of spirit to share is really, really welcome and appreciated. And the second thing that I want to address is that I'm hearing so much guilt. And I
Yep,
want to take a
yep, yep.
minute, and since we're going there, to really just keep it real. And I want you to really address that issue of guilt, of even a little bit of shame and fear. And I want you to like really think about releasing that guilt. And what has been done is done. You cannot go back and change it. You can only forgive yourself and boost yourself in this process because you talked about your son, you talked about your daughter, you talked about your career, and you even talked about your daughter thinking that you focus on everyone else. But I think you're not focusing on you also.
Absolutely.
In
Hmm.
terms of your son, let it you focus the attention that you needed to focus on him to save him. And when you have that situation, as sad as it is, necessarily the other child is going to feel it. It's just the way that these situations work out. But when you're trying to manage keeping a roof over everyone's head and one child's mental health problems, there are going to be stressors in other parts of the family. In terms of your daughter, um, you know, it sounds like she's really going through a rough patch. It may be that she feels like she's been unheard. And a lot of times when mental health issues aren't addressed, they just escalate. I used to say to Kelly all the time, he's speaking until you hear him, right? And he's just going to keep doing this or
Yes.
whatever until you hear her. Okay, she's
Until I
telling you
finally listened. Took a
yeah,
long time. Hmm.
in no uncertain terms that this current situation is not acceptable to her. Okay. And that means that you're going to have to adjust. It could diagnostically, it is important to know where she is, but it's not crucial, right? They could have the correct diagnosis of bipolar, but it could be anxiety, social anxiety, that has or depression that's been untreated, right? Because
Yep.
sometimes it
Okay.
looks like a
Got it.
break when it just builds up, builds up, builds up, right? So I done a lot of work in terms of bipolar, and I understand that half the time I meet a person with that diagnosis, they don't have bipolar. Sometimes I see people that have bipolar that don't have the diagnosis. One thing we're not good at is diagnosing people of color with bipolar. Okay. So I want you to like not like I didn't say that for you to like doubt diagnosis or get on the bandwagon to crusade against that diagnosis, but to keep an open mind. And we have to treat the symptoms more so than be worried about the label. So the last thing you asked was about her road. Like if she's getting better and she is working her way out of the paranoia, then that's a good thing. um, uh, Partial hospital programs can kind of help you to take the next steps. And hopefully, at some point, she could either do intensive outpatient as the next step, or an intensive outpatient program, or a intensive therapy program where she's seeing her therapist 2 to 3 times a week to help stabilize her. The point now is stabilization and getting her back to a point where she is rationally processing and coping with reality. And then I would suggest that you get some guidance on how to move forward as a family and maybe have some sessions where she and the family can talk through what her needs are, how to best parent her. But I also want you to include as a part of all of this some self-care, whatever that might mean, even if you got 5 minutes between patients to take a breath, to affirm yourself, to get something healthy to eat, to take a walk around the courtyard, whatever you can do to start building in that care for yourself and to stop punishing yourself for what has happened to these kids.
Okay.
And can I
Thank
just
you.
add something to that? Because the exact same thing happened in my household. We were focused so much on Kyle, and Chris we thought was fine, and he was not fine. And so, a lot of very similar things happened. And so very recently, fast forward years later, I said to Chris, my little one, like your daughter, I said to him with some guidance, and some coaching, I made him, I said something to the effect of, I'm really sorry for how you feel and for how I parented you. And I said, I can't think of anything that's more important to me in my life than being a place where you feel seen and loved and heard. And I'm so sorry that you don't feel that way. So from this point forward, my intention is to do my best so you can feel that way. And I love you more than anything. And he looked at me in shock and he said, You were not a bad mom, which made me feel great. And at the same time, I think he actually really took that in.
Mhm.
So most recently, he's been, speaking, talking and asking me questions and texting me, Mom, I might want to break up with my girlfriend. How do I do it? So we're talking more than we have talked in his whole life. But I think it was prompted by a real genuine vulnerability and an apology. And because, if that's how they feel, that's how they feel. And so I think it's important to be vulnerable, show the vulnerability, and also forgive yourself, like
Right.
Dr. Linda said. That's
Right.
really critical.
It is one thing to hear what the person said and to
Yes.
take that in. If they tell us this is not enough, mom, right? It's
Yeah.
one thing to accept that and to say, I hear you.
Hmm.
Um, but it's another thing to torture yourself for the rest of
Right.
your life about
Not
it.
torturing. Yeah, not torturing, but I think looking
Mhm.
at it as, so we have a new possibility. Every day is a
Mhm.
new opportunity to start fresh. And so now
Mhm.
that you know how she feels, there is an opportunity to,
Mhm.
to try to build a different relationship. Because at the end of the day, I think that's what all our kids want. They want to feel, well, that's what all people want, is to feel seen, heard, and loved, like truly loved, not for performance, not for some swim meet, not for, straight A's, not for any of that, but just who they are. So I just wanted to share that because I had the same exact, not the runaway, but some, other things that I won't share because Chris would not be okay with that, whereas Kyle is an open book. So I respect his privacy, but a lot of similar things because I focus so much on Kyle. But thank you for sharing. It's
Thank
really
you so much.
really hard and it's going to be okay and you're going to get through it.
Just want to also say that one of the people commented that they're sending you love and they appreciate and approve of your courageousness.
Yeah.
Um, and to ask you to take care of yourself in the same way that Kelly and I just did.
Yeah. Yes. There's another comment. I don't know if you want to
Yeah.
read that one.
Yeah, I am. Yeah, the first point is about how we don't age on the outside, right? Um, and for y'all to remember, that's what we call a phenotype. Okay, we're not talking about that. We're talking about how we're aging on the inside. The inside is what's going to determine our lives and our quality of our lives. Just because we look good when we put on that oil of Olay and that sacred, and we got funky haircuts and glasses, that doesn't doesn't mean a lot in terms of how your body is aging on the inside, right? What was happening with me, I'm gonna just throw it out there, is that despite how the outside looked, the inside was not doing well. The joints were hurting, because I was carrying too much weight on them.
Yes.
Right. And I was tired a lot of the day. Right. I wasn't feeding my body or even hydrating it in the way that I should have been. And God only knows I wasn't sleeping. And so, like, it doesn't matter. Like I said, if I go to the hairdresser and I get the clamp in hair and the this and the that, and I look and I get put on my MAC makeup, and Kelly and I go to an event and we look good and we take pictures, it doesn't matter if the inside is not looking well. So that was the first point that she made. And we also talked about like saying no, right? And approaching your calendar. And for
Mm.
me, in sticking to your time frames, when you get to the end of the designated time frame, walk, take a short walk, do something for yourself. I'm trying to like really narrow my focus. And so when they said that they've learned from me to say no, is that a lot of us are ambitious, a lot of us have high goals, but I'm doing a lot better because I'm like, okay, this year I'm not focusing on that. Right. Or this year, I'm focusing on selling and moving houses and doing a lot of personal stuff. So I'm not going to get done the stuff professionally that I want to do because I'm taking care of my health and I'm taking care of my family and I'm moving and rearranging my finances so that I can do all of this stuff. And the other thing the person said that I think is really important is that humor, music, I like would like not even watch things that I wanted to watch because I'm like, oh, it's 8 o'clock and I need to do something else for 15 more minutes. And then I would never watch the thing that everybody texted me to watch. Take the time to like watch your show if you want to, go out for an evening, go to that concert. It doesn't have to be all the time, but we really should be doing the things that feed us, particularly now. And for everybody, Kelly asked me for solutions. For everyone, it's different, right? For me, it might be to follow the tennis tour around Europe, which I plan on doing at some point. But for you, it just might be you go in your room in your chair and you sit. You pray. You have a little place where you can read your Bible. I like having a room where I can't hear other people in my house. So figure out like what it is that you need. And some of you, somebody on this listening today doesn't even really know what they need. So it's taking this year to like remember what pleases you, right? Does a walk please you? How do you fit that in? Kelly and I were talking about this a couple of weeks ago. If I don't do it in the morning, it's not going to get done. I accept that now about myself instead of berating myself for not doing it. Um, Yeah, we understand how we are aging. We age on the inside, but I'm also learning that incorporating the positive aspects of myself, my circumstances help to manage stress also. Yes. Um, just the positive aspects of um, yourself, like affirming yourself. What am I good at? Like tell yourself, like Kelly said to me one day, and I was so proud of her. She's like, I am a good mother. I mean, and I was just like so happy. I didn't even comment because I was so happy to hear her affirm that part of herself as opposed to like blaming herself. Being a good mother is often not tied to outcomes, right? It's tied to that you put your whole heart and spirit into it. You can't always guarantee which way a person's going to go. And Kelly, you're muted. Um,
I was just commenting, that's right. We do the best we can.
yep.
And when we
And
know
you
better, we do better. That's just the truth.
and I want to emphasize one other point that when you have a child that is not doing well, 75% of your time is going to be focused on that.
Right.
And everything else has to fit into the 25 because you're trying to save that child. You're trying to get them help. You're trying to divert them. And necessarily, the other children are going to be impacted. And you just got to give yourself some grace for that. And I'm not saying we're not going to address it, right?
Mm.
You're dealing with Chris, the caller, the other commenter is dealing with the second child. But
Mhm.
it is a result of a natural phenomenon. One child is mentally stressed. You're going to focus a lot of your efforts on that.
Right. I think a great learning from last week with Kyle speaking was just how he shared so, I think, openly about the control factor. And so many of us tried to control too much, especially in high school, because of fear. So I think that part, really releasing, and even like I was sharing this morning, my stress level overnight about that beach gathering, I was, just worried. But it was out of it's fear factor. So the
So
less we
say
can,
say more about that. Say more about that. Like
the fear that I had,
just like the control, like his point was he wanted to make those decisions for himself.
right?
And
And
even
he was doing a great job. He said I was getting straight A's. I was top in the country, and I was, 14. And I just wanted to go out with my girlfriend, wanted to go to a party. And the answer was just no, flat no. We don't do parties. There will be no parties. Versus, okay,
Mhm.
if you go to a party, make sure you only if you're offered a drink, don't drink it only unless you open it or whatever those rules are. But start with trust and trust that he's going to make good decisions versus just a flat no, which was a control tactic to try to keep him out of those environments with alcohol and drugs, etc., which actually ended up, spiraling in the opposite way versus the
but
intention.
but again, I just want to say this. You have a 14-year-old child, right? We've all been raised to like and they have a talent or skill in something. We've all been raised just to try to channel that and to
Yeah.
try to help them discipline themselves and to make good choices so that they can maybe be extraordinary in something. We've
Mhm.
all been raised to do that. And particularly as
That's
people
right.
of color, you got a child that can run that track or swim that thing. I know you and Dee both have talented, extraordinarily talented children. And your job is to like try to take what we were given 20, 30 years ago and apply it to 2020 Bethesda. And that was what you were trying to do. And I'm not saying that you made all of the best choices, but also that it's understandable that you try to like keep your 14, 15-year-old from to get him to reconsider quitting to something that he was already like among the best in the nation at, right? To get him to not indulge in the culture of Bethesda, you know which is as soon as high school starts the drinking starts. So I'm just saying that like it's not necessarily all a horrible thing what you were trying to do for him, and that he really wanted to have control at a really young age. What if they or someone says, what if they D says, what if they've already broken our trust? How do you know allow them to do something knowing that they habitually make poor choices? Same, that's my point. Is that like your job is to still parent a 14-year-old. Your job is not to hand over the reins to a freshman in high school or a sophomore in high school. And some of the dangers of letting your child, to be honest with you, go to a party in Potomac where there's two black kids and 100 white kids, right? And drink in someone else's home who's not doesn't have the same ethos that you have or the same values that you have. So I'm trying to bring some balance to what happened last week, right? Because I didn't want to interrupt what you were and he were talking about because I think it was really important for him to say what he had to say, but I don't think that it was all your the blame totally falls on you. I think the circumstances and the world of Bethesda is really, really fast. And you were trying to preserve his future.
Yes, I do think, however, I agree with you 100%. I just also do think there really is something to be said for, leaning into trust first, until it's broken. And which is sort of Dee's question, like starting in a space of trust and planting those seeds and, saying, I'm trusting you to make good choices, that kind of thing is a different angle that I think can be a positive angle. I'm not self-blaming or shaming. I'm just saying I do think what he shared was valuable in terms of, at least starting there and,
Right. But
you
and one last thing, Kelly, if I could just say quickly,
sure, please.
also like when your child is involved in an activity and they're moving to these levels of national levels and international levels, I do think that you one of the fair things is to do is to get them to honor their commitments when they want to quit. So if you committed through the year, if the swim season has already started, I do think it's fair and reasonable to ask them to do what they committed to. But I think ultimately it has to be their choice. You can't really say you're going to keep swimming.
Yeah,
But I do think that to teach them values about you can't just walk out on your swim team halfway in the season is a reasonable and rational thing. And we've already paid this money. That's a reasonable and rational thing. But after that, I think it's got to be their choice. Only they can drive themselves to greatness in a
that's
sport.
right. That's right. Agree completely. Agree completely. So I want to ask, is anybody else, we're almost out of time. Does
Good
anybody else have
morning.
any? Yes, good morning.
Hi. I just wanted to make one comment regarding the previous speaker regarding children or siblings who are kind of impacted by their other spending focus more time on your other sibling. Two daughters, the old one, depression, anxiety, suicide, eating disorder, and the younger daughter who was also impacted because we weren't spending as much time on her. That we found tended to work a bit, especially over the last couple of years, is my husband has a better or stronger relationship with my younger daughter, and he has a harder time managing my older daughter. So he kind of spends a bit more time with my younger daughter to ensure that she's getting what she needs. And I seem to have the more connection and understand my older daughter. That's just something that's worked a little bit for us in our family, trying to make sure that we also and ensure our younger daughter, who has some overall challenges, but making sure that she still is getting what she needs.
That point is well taken. Switching off between parenting is a good idea. Calling in other family members, grandma, getting them counseling support early in the process, even before they show signs. But if you know that one sibling is really suffering and the other sibling is watching, you already know that there's going to be some inherent feelings of resentment. There's going to be like feeling like their needs are not met. And so like working through that, even getting mental health support or family counseling early in the process, calling in other family members, and just checking in, having regular check-ins with the sibling that initially didn't have problems. Even if it's Friday night, you pick them up at school and you spend 1 hour extra with them. If that's all you can do, any kind of way that you can sort of address their needs while you're going through crisis with the other child. One last thing I want to say, Kelly, is that I want to just say this for the career women out there. Again, I work a lot in a guilt-free environment, and I tell people, just let me know, right? But it's not always about the quantity. It's about the regularity, right? Like that Friday evening, or every other Tuesday. I'm gonna come get you when your school is out at the half day. There are ways to do it and for you to do it with a heavy duty, high flying career. It's hard, but I wanted to like take some of that guilt away and away from and shame away from like you're a successful woman. That's not a bad thing.
That's right.
But to try to fit how do you fit parenting in the guise of a highly successful career?
It's tough. I remember as the speaker who spoke earlier today so beautifully and vulnerably, I remember you sharing that you were on your way to a surgery or something, or a surgeon, and you were dealing with a major crisis, and how traumatic that was. That was several months ago. And yet you had to go do what you needed to do for your job and for the person that needed the surgery while you had this crisis. So it's a real conflict, an internal conflict. And I think what Dr. Linda says is really valuable and helpful because it is possible to be both and do both. I think I see that now. My mom always says, we can't get the time back. And I always say, I was sure wish I could, because I think I would have done some things differently. Although, every day is a new opportunity to try something new, to say something different. I'll see Kyle today for an hour before I head back to Cleveland,
Right.
because I want him to learn how to do his taxes. So we're going to meet at a tax place so he can, do that for him with me, but learn how to do that. That's a precious hour, that I'll have with him.
And to just release the past.
That's
I would
right.
say assume that you're right. Okay, Kelly, assume that you're right. You could have done some things differently. Assume that you messed up, right?
Yeah,
Just assume that. Even assuming that, what good does it do to keep reliving it and rehashing it
that's right.
other than make you feel bad about yourself? It does
Right.
no
Well,
good. It doesn't help your
mhm,
child one bit.
that's right. It's
Let
a
it
new
go.
possibility every day. We get to choose how we show up and what energy we bring into the situation.
The parenting doesn't end,
Hmm.
right? You still have time. You're teaching taxes now, right?
Yeah, yeah. Exactly. For the first time, I'm like, he doesn't know how to do that. So, yeah. And then I'll, rush to the airplane again, and that's all good too. But, I think even that good 1 hour I'm looking forward to it, to see him. So this has been a great conversation. So many wonderful comments in the chat, openness and vulnerability. That's why we're here. It is a safe space, and we are all going through something, as you said so beautifully earlier. So, Dr. Linda, if you want to wrap us up with a couple last words, and then Dr. Vicky will close us out this morning in a prayer. Any last thoughts?
We were talking about this and the state of the world, and we're just going to keep bringing that in to our calls, and to try to help you sustain through this period by acknowledging that it exists. And so, if you're feeling overwhelmed, I want you to try to get in touch with yourself, write down what's bothering you, put it
Yeah.
on a piece of paper and release it. And then start writing down what makes you feel good, how you can fit that in a little bit more. What relaxes you? What gives you hope? That's it.
What relaxes you and what gives you hope? Love that. Love that. Love that. Well, thank you for being here as always, Dr. Linda, and appreciate you and Dr. Vicky. Off over to you to close us out this morning.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Dr. Linda, again for an amazing call. Just such wisdom. God, we thank you for this day that you have given to us. Thank you for the wisdom deposited into our hearts as parents. Thank you for grace. Thank you for the reminder to be gentle with ourselves and the reminder that we are doing the best that we can as we're growing while we are growing. Bless our families, bless our households, our children. Thank you for the opportunity to be in community once again. We pray now and lift up Kelly and Dee and Dr. Linda for the great work, the great visionary leadership that they are. Continue to strengthen and fortify them and bless us to be able to come back together again next week in community to lift one another up so that we can be better parents and better people, and our children can continue to grow in grace. We give you glory for all of these things and even the prayers that are in our hearts. Strengthen our hearts and allow us to continue to be the praise of your glory while we are here. In your name we pray. Amen. Have a powerful day,
Amen.
everyone.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for being here.
Amen. Thank you, Dr. Vicky. We'll be back next week. Have a beautiful day, everybody. Take care.